Second to last stage, and we are almost there. This week we are talking about the jury deliberations and the verdict stage of the trial. A relatively short, sometimes, stage of the trial, and a very long, stressful time of the trial, depending on which side you're on and what the trial's like. So stick around and let's talk about it in just a minute. Happy Friday, everybody. Hope you're having a good week. And this week, we are talking about the penultimate stage of a criminal trial, at least on the federal side, and that is the jury deliberations and the verdict of a trial. Now, before I get into this, as always, I do have a couple of really huge favors that I need to ask you. They do help me out a ton. One is give this video a like, give this channel a subscribe. Both of those buttons are right below the video. And then the second thing is head over to my Twitch channel. The link is in the video description. And follow that channel too. I do live streams every Sunday night and Wednesday night, and I'd really like to have more people that show up every week and chat about the law, topical issues in the law, what's been going on, what we can expect, have any questions that you have about being a lawyer, representing criminal defendants, whatever. So really trying to grow both this channel and that channel. So I'd really appreciate all of your help. Now, let's talk about jury deliberations and verdict. Now, when the jury deliberates, you have to remember that the jury has been instructed from the judge on multiple occasions, usually, that while the trial is going on, they are not allowed to deliberate. And what that means is they are not allowed to discuss this case with anybody, including each other. Most people think that in a trial that lasts 4, 5, 6 weeks, the jury members are talking to each other about the case and, hey, did you hear what that witness said? And don't you think that's important? And did you see when the prosecutor said X, Y, and Z? They're not supposed to be doing that. In fact, if the court or the lawyers find out that they have been doing that, that is grounds for a mistrial. So jury members typically follow the instructions that are given to them by the court, and they have been sitting there for 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, however long the trial is, and not allowed to discuss anything that they've seen. So as you can imagine, when those deliberations start, a lot of times there's just this venting from jurors of all of this stuff they've been wanting to talk about, all of these things that they've been wanting to say that they haven't been allowed to, which is why a lot of times deliberations can last longer than you might think, because juries typically, they want to do a good job, and so they want to spend their time going over everything that they've seen and they've heard. At least the good juries do. And so that can take some time. And so, like I said, initially, what a judge will tell a jury to do is they will go back to the deliberation room, and the judge will tell them, I want you to select one person that will be your foreman or your foreperson, foreman, forelady, whatever. And that person will almost be the spokesperson for the jury. Anytime the jury has a question, the foreperson is responsible for writing that question down in the form of a note and sending it to the judge. Anytime there is an issue in which the jury has to come back into the courtroom and explain the issue to the judge, the foreperson is typically the person that explains to the judge what is going on. When there is a verdict, the foreperson is, in some instances, the person who publishes that verdict or reads that verdict, but they're always the person that answers the judge when they say, we have reached a verdict. So the foreperson is, like I said, really the spokesperson for the jury. But other than that, juries are really given free rein to deliberate in any way they see fit, as long as it's within the bounds and the confines of the law. The judge, the lawyers, the bailiffs do not step in and say, hey, we think you should deliberate by looking at this and then this and then this. They don't step in and give jurors advice on what they should or shouldn't look at. That's what closing arguments are for. And so when deliberations start, it's really up to the jury on how and for how long they deliberate. Some judges will even let the jury completely set their own deliberation schedule. So if the jury goes back at, let's say, noon, is when the case is handed to the jury and the judge says you may now begin your deliberations, the judge may tell the jury, one of the first things I want you to do is let us know what your schedule is going to be. Are you going to deliberate every day from 8 to 5? Are you going to want to come in later, start at 10, but stay later until 6 or 7? Are you wanting to stay until a verdict is reached? Some judges will allow that. So the jury is given very, very wide latitude on how they deliberate. If they say we need pads and pens and whiteboards, then the court will try to give them that. If they say we need to see all of the exhibits again, the court will make those available. If they say we need a laptop so that we can play these videos that were played over and over again, that will be made available to them. So the jury is allowed to deliberate in any ways they see fit for as long as they need. Now, during the course of the deliberations, there are going to be questions that come up. Juries have questions that they need answer to. Some questions are very simple. What exhibit was it that had the bank record from Bank of America? Something very simple. Some of them can be very complicated. I had one case where I went to trial and there were 2 defendants charged in a conspiracy, and the jury asked the question to the judge, if we find one person not guilty of the conspiracy, what does that mean for the other defendant? Because the jury was very smart and they caught on to the fact that a conspiracy has to be an agreement between 2 people. And so if one person wasn't in agreement, how can they logically say that the other person was? And so they had caught on to that nuance in the law. And so these questions will get sent out to the judge in the form of a note, and then the judge will typically ask the lawyers to discuss how should we respond to this note. And then the lawyers and the judge have to have a discussion on what response is accurate, is proper under the law. Because again, we can't be giving them our opinion on legal issues. We can't do that. That's up to them to decide. We can't try to show them how to reach a certain conclusion. That would be an improper answer. And so those answers get hashed out, they get discussed, and then they get sent back to the jury for them to continue the deliberations. Now, as most people know, the deliberations have to continue until a verdict is reached, and the verdict has to be unanimous. One way or the other, it has to be all 12 people say guilty, all 12 people say not guilty. If they reach a point where they cannot reach a unanimous verdict, if one person says, I don't care what the 11 of you say, you guys are thinking he's guilty, I'm saying he's not guilty, and there's no hope of swaying that one juror's mind, at that point, the judge, after some prodding and saying, well, look, I want you to keep trying, I want you to go back, I want you to talk about it more. After that, if that is showing that there is just nothing that is going to be done to sway that one juror, then the judge has no option but to declare a mistrial, and the case starts all over again. Because that is what happens when you don't have a unanimous verdict. So that actually happens a decent amount. It's something that is not insanely common, but it's not rare either. And you can tell how frustrating that could be to both the defense and to the prosecution, depending on the facts of the case. But other than that, like I said, it's their world. They get to deliberate for as long as they need to in any way, shape, or form that they feel like they need to. As a defense lawyer, this is one of the most stressful times because there's nothing you can do. You're just sitting there. You have to be in the courthouse or in the courtroom, just in case there's a question, you have to be ready to go and help provide an answer to the jurors. So you're just sitting there waiting for sometimes days. In one trial I had, we were waiting for 2 weeks for a verdict to come back. And there's that feeling that there's nothing you can do. It's completely out of your hands. And as a lawyer, you're constantly doing that thing at that point where you're thinking back over the trial and you're like, man, I should have said this. 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 And knowing that you can't do anything is just ridiculously stressful. And then at the end of all that, the jury comes back in. they render their verdict. Again, this is a scene that we have seen play out in countless movies, TV shows, on YouTube, on court TV, you name it. We've seen jury verdicts be rendered. There is not quite words that I can use to describe that feeling, whether it's the absolute elation of getting the justice that your client deserves, you get that not guilty verdict that you know he earned, or in some instances, that gut-wrenching, heartbreaking feeling of hearing that guilty verdict come down and standing next to your client, and you can almost physically feel, in some instances, you can physically feel the slump and just the reality and the weight of that decision hit that person. And it's very humbling. It's very tough. I've said many times that on the day I am in trial and a jury returns a verdict of guilty, on the day that that doesn't bother me at all, I'll probably hang it up because I don't need to be doing this anymore. I need to at least still have that capacity to care and to empathize, or else I'm not very good at what I do. So it can be an incredibly exciting moment, or it can be an incredibly deflating moment, but you can't let it define everything about you, because you have to kind of keep going on. Whether it's a great verdict or a horrible verdict, you have to move on to the next fight the next day, because this train doesn't stop. So that does it for this week. I rambled a little bit this week, but it is what it is. I like this stuff. I love this stuff. I love talking about this stuff. So please come by the live stream. I really do want more people there so that I can have these conversations in real time and we can talk about whether it's this or anything else. So remember, the Twitch channel, the link is down below in the video description. Come by Wednesday nights, Sunday nights, and I will be streaming for at least an hour on those nights at 7:45 p.m. I look forward to seeing you there. I look forward to seeing you here next Friday for my last of the 10 video series on the 10 stages of a criminal trial. So until I see you again, I want everybody out there to be good and stay on the right side of the bars.